this all over the place. Techstars is a really vibrant example of it. I keep stepping on these things. It's making me very uncomfortable now, because now I feel like that thing, the rolling monster. When Techstars started, it was literally 4 people, myself, David Cohen, David Brown, and Jared Polis, who some of you may know. Jared's one of our representatives in the House, represents Boulder. Jared was a very successful entrepreneur before he became a politician. Had two companies that were acquired, one for $800 million, one for $500 million, that he started from scratch. David Brown, David Cohen were very successful entrepreneurs, and then I was a successful entrepreneur, and then subsequently a very active investor. And the 4 of us got together and we said, there must be a more interesting way to create startups. This is 2006. Anybody remember what was going on in 2006? You couldn't raise any money anywhere, right? The idea of startups were, oh my God, it's internet bubble. Startup sounds like internet bubble, scary, bad, run. You know, venture capital, it's disastrous. You can't make money in venture capital. Big investors are running away from venture capital. Turns out that some of the best companies of our generation were created in 2005, 2006, 2007. If you think about the 3 I mentioned earlier, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, they were all in that time frame. 2006, we said, gosh, there's just a complete lack of seed financing. There must be a good way to do this, and we love Boulder, Colorado. Let's see if we can do something in Boulder where we get, 10 companies to come, and we'll give them some money, and we'll help them. We'll surround them with a bunch of the successful entrepreneurs in Boulder who, are just going to have fun this summer. And I like to say you should always have an evil plan when you try something new. And our evil plan with Techstars was, in our worst case, we would have 20 new people in Boulder. We figured 30 people would be the founders of these companies. 20 of them would move to Boulder, and we have 20 new friends. That was our worst case. Cost us $230,000 to do the first Techstars. We decided to do it, over a weekend, and we funded it the next day. 80,000 of it came from David Cohen, and the other 150 came 50-50-50 from me, Jared, and David Brown. You're getting a sense of it, right? We didn't spend a lot of time creating a plan for Techstars. We didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it. We didn't do research. We didn't go investigate what was going on. We saw a need, and we just said, let's just go do this. And if it doesn't work, I've spent $50,000 as an investor on a lot stupider things than this idea that had a much, didn't have any view towards what would happen if it didn't work. So this 2006, we ran our first program in 2007. After we ran that first program, which was very, very fun, successful, we screwed up a lot of things, made a lot of mistakes, but we learned a lot, and we had some interesting companies start to emerge from it. We had about 20 organizations from around the US come to us, 20 people I should say, and say, we want to do Techstars in our city. And most of these were individuals, entrepreneurs. Some of them were university, and there were a couple of intersections with people in government, especially state government, saying, hey, it would be great if you brought Techstars to, Cleveland. I'm making Cleveland up. I don't remember where they were anymore. And we said, we have no idea if what we're doing is any good or makes any sense. We don't know. We did it this one time. It seemed to work, but we made a lot of mistakes. We need to just do what we do another time in Boulder, but we'll tell you everything we did. And if you want to do what we did, go for it. If you want to create a thing like this, a mentor-driven accelerator in your city, awesome. And a number of folks took us up on it. And there was a program in Chicago called Accelerate. There's a program in Philadelphia called Dream It, and so forth. This is a network, right? Instead of trying to control it and create the accelerator organization and then have our accelerators underneath us that we managed, we said, this is a mess. We have no idea if what we're doing is right, but here's the rules, here's the playbook, here's how to do it. And lots of interesting things came about. I was talking to somebody from Chicago earlier that knows Troy Henikoff, who is the founder of Accelerate. 4 years later, we decided to start a Techstars program in Chicago because we've now expanded around the world, and we essentially merged with Troy's organization. Accelerate became Techstars Chicago, and Troy is the managing director of the program in Chicago. Again, on that network, we didn't pick Troy because he was conveniently in Chicago. He was one of the active engagers in the network that was being created broadly around this. As it's expanded, there's 2 other vectors that are interesting to think about. Today, Techstars as an organization is about 70 people. It's effectively self-funded. We've raised very little primary capital for Techstars, the organization. We've raised a lot of money that we've then invested in these companies and built around these programs. But we've started to develop a series of programs with large companies. As I said earlier, Disney in LA, Sprint in Kansas City. Those large companies are very interested in figuring out how to engage with startups in the context of innovation and their business. So it's not that these businesses are disinterested or don't have self-interest, but what they're saying is instead of trying to control the innovation process within our company, we want to do something that's in conjunction with these vibrant startup communities or these vibrant startup networks already. And so the Disney Accelerator is another node on what is an expanding Techstars network. And the companies that go through the Disney Accelerator aren't something different than the companies that go through Techstars Boulder. They're part of the same broader organization. All right? Where 7 years later, you wind the clock forward, we've now had about 600 companies go through different Techstars programs around the world. We have several thousand investors and several thousand active mentors who are connected to this broad network. So if a company that goes through Techstars Boulder wants a connection to an entrepreneur in Seattle, where we have a Techstars program, it's likely that they were 1 or at most 2 degrees of separation away from that entrepreneur in Seattle because they're already part of this extending network. So this is a frame of reference that I think is so, so important. Disney, I'll just use them as an example because I think they've been a great partner. Disney didn't try to create their own version of this. What they did was they said, let's connect to this node. By the way, it wasn't, and you have to do us, and you can't do anything else around innovation. That's stupid for a small organization like Techstars to try to impose on a big organization like Disney. What Techstars as a small organization did was focused on minimizing the friction to get Disney engaged with it and vice versa. When I think about the companies that have been funded by In-Q-Tel, Mapbox would be an example. What Mapbox tries to do is minimize the friction in its engagement model with In-Q-Tel and help In-Q-Tel, the bigger organization, understand how to be more effective with working with it. I think this plays out through technology transfer organizations, through government labs. The challenge is when you try to control what's happening in this network, it's very, very frustrating. It's very difficult. Your probability of success decreases significantly. When you try to figure out how to connect to that network and engage with it, knowing that downstream there's formality. Does Techstars and Disney have a legal agreement? Of course they do. Was that legal agreement painful to negotiate? Of course it was. Did we have moments where we felt like the piece of candy on the ground being stepped on by Disney as we went through that process? Of course. That's okay. But that's not the behavioral norm between the people who are the nodes in the hierarchy and the nodes in the network, because they're communicating very rapidly, seeking a solution together. So I'm not suggesting that the structure or dynamic of the hierarchy is bad, but I'm asserting strongly that you can be much, much more effective if, as a member of that and as people in those organizations, you try to figure out how to connect to these very, very rapidly expanding networks and participate in them rather than trying to co-opt them. All right, so I wanted to just start with a construct for today. I know you've got a lot of other conversations from an industry perspective, but carry that hierarchy network, the collision between them and how they work together, and try to walk in the shoes of the startup. Try to think about what it must feel like to be the CEO of the startup working, 16 hours a day. She's got a life that she's trying to live at the same time, probably with the same struggles that many of us have, but now with the extreme pressure of worrying about making payroll in 2 weeks or 4 weeks and figuring out funding and having competitive threats. And as you're interacting with her as a CEO, try to walk in her shoes. And not just her shoes, but think about the other company that you're interacting with that's different, that might be more mature. Try to walk in the CEO of that company's shoes and how he's interacting with your organization, and try to lower the friction. Try to attach to their network rather than co-opt them into your hierarchy. Okay, hopefully that's useful. I want to do the rest with Q&A because I know you're covering lots and lots of stuff. Again, I heard you weren't bashful, so I'll go wherever you want. I'm happy to continue down this thread. I'm happy to talk about venture capital. I'm happy to talk about specific examples. I'm happy to talk about the broad funding landscape, whatever's interesting. Go ahead. And I'll repeat the question so the people in the back can hear. Oh, they're going to do microphones, make you run around. It's good exercise. Hang on one sec. And when we're done, Dick's just going to cut us off. So.
Okay. I'm very curious to know how that first conversation went when you first started with your 10 potential investors and the 10 entrepreneurs.
Oh, at the first Techstars?
Right.
So it was one investor, which was Techstars. Okay, so the 4 of us funded it, and we funded those 10 companies. What we did was we ran a selection process. We had no idea how to do this. So we're like, we'll put up a web page. We'll let people sign up on the web page if they want to apply to Techstars. And I have a popular blog, so I'll blog about it, and I'll make some noise about it. And maybe we'll get a couple, 20, 30, 40 people who will apply, and we'll pick 10. And when I say people, I really mean companies, because each company typically is 2 or 3 people, sometimes 4 people. So we did that. We had about a 2-month application process. The application was an intelligence test, right? It was like 18 questions that if you spend 5 minutes, you could fill out. What is your name? What is the thing you're most proud of doing? How many people are on your team? What are their names? Stuff like that. What's a description of your business? Nothing more. Do you have a URL? Nothing more complicated. We got about, in that first program session, we got about 300 applications, maybe almost 400 applications, which surprised us. We went and visited, we sorted them. There were a bunch that we kind of looked at and said, nah, not interesting. About 70 that we thought were high quality. And we sat down and we went through those 70, and we picked about 30 that we were really interested in. And the way we did that was we read the applications, but the 4 of us then sat around and talked about each one. If they had a website, we went on the website. We argued which ones were interesting, which ones weren't. And we tried to just get enough. We knew we could only get 10 companies, so we tried to get 30 that we were really interested with the idea that 10 of them would say yes. We then stack ranked them. So we had the 10 that we really wanted, and then when people said no for some reason, we'd keep going down the list. And then we went and visited each of the companies and sat with them. We didn't make them come to us. We went to them to sit with them and understand what they were doing. And I think the 10th company we accepted was the 14th on the list. And I know that there were 2 of the top 10 that we decided not to extend offers to after we met with them. So my guess is 2 said no to us, and 2 we decided after we met with them we weren't interested. So that was what our process was. When I look back on that first cohort of 10, the funding that we did for that program and the capital we got, we've already made 3 times our money on the investment from those companies, and there's still 1 of them that's very active. 5 of them failed, 4 of them failed, 2 of them had pretty good size exits for where they were, and a couple of them, okay little exits. So it was, kind of fascinating to reflect on it. Today, our process is totally different, right? I mean, we learned a lot. We still put up an application. Now we get 1,000 to 2,000 applications per program cycle. We still only let 10 companies in per program. So we're very focused on keeping the cohorts small so that we can really give them the kind of engagement we want. That's the model that many of the other accelerators that are mentor-driven accelerators have followed, which is keep the class size small. But we now are much more active at recruiting companies to Techstars that the individual managing directors have relationships with, or recruiting founders to Techstars versus just trying to deal with this gigantic application funnel. And I would say for the more mature programs that have been around for 2, 3, 4 years, let's say once you hit your 3rd year of your cycle, probably 6 or 7 of the 10 companies are actively recruited, and the rest come through this application process. For a brand new program, it's much more, hey, we're doing this program with Disney, and that's the attractor, and we use the program cycle for that. Is that helpful? Somebody in the back? Well, go ahead. Whoever has the mic, just go.